You to come up. Please also welcome Alexander Cousteau. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So I'm not sure what kind of introduction we got. My name is Jon Bowermaster. I'm a writer and a filmmaker and a long-time representative of National Geographic, as is Alexander. Alexander is one of National Geographic's long-time emerging explorers, an ocean advocate, a great environmentalist, and a representative of a very famous family. We're just going to have a small conversation for 15, 20 minutes about sustainability. We're not going to go too deep into the ocean hole. We're going to focus on really kind of what Alexander perceives as how we can lead a more sustainable life today. And I heard a great quote last night during the introduction where somebody said that the future is like a hurricane bearing down on us, which I tend to agree with. And so I guess my question initially with Alexander is if it does feel like this hurricane is bearing down on us, how do we manage to live a more sustainable life? Where do we start?
So that's a question that I hear a lot. Is we feel the urgency. We understand that there are a lot of issues facing us in the environment, and we know that more needs to be done. But how do we do it? And I think about that in terms of top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. So the top-down approach is investments and technology and companies that are looking for new solutions and creating change at a very big scale. But the other side of that coin is what each and every one of us need to do. Going back in time, my grandfather was Jacques Cousteau. And 70 years ago, nobody knew what was under the surface of the ocean. He was the first to bring those stories to people around the world. And he told stories that made people fall in love with the oceans, fall in love with the idea of exploring them. And over time, fall in love with the idea of protecting them. I grew up on expedition with my father and fell in love with the oceans alongside him and his team. But over time, I saw the places that I had fallen in love with as a child start to disappear. And I realized that one of the most important things that we need to do to shift that paradigm is to change the stories that we tell ourselves, that we tell each other, and the stories we talk about when we refer to the future. At National Geographic, we tell a lot of stories. And those stories are continuing to inspire people around the world. But often those stories that we see about the environment are incredibly negative. We see it in the news, we see it in documentaries, this feeling that the problems are bigger than our ability to address them. That was brought home to me poignantly when I was giving a speech at a university in Wisconsin, and a 14-year-old girl got up after my talk and through her tears asked me if there was any reason for her generation to hope for a better future, a more hopeful future, because everything she heard around her at school and on the news was so frightening and so depressing, negative, that she didn't know what to look forward to. And I think that there is this asymmetry in how we report on what's happening in our world. There's so much negative news out there. And my grandfather, he didn't capture people's imaginations by telling them the problems. He captured their imaginations by inviting them to write themselves into the story of the oceans. Right. And I think we need to do more of that.
Well, I think that's become a necessity now for us as storytellers. I take documentaries out on the road and I show them night after night after night, and I get bummed out. They're all environmental stories, and I've turned a corner in the last year, and we literally just put out a series of short films called Hope on the Hudson. I think it's obligatory for us to try and turn the conversation away from negativity and towards more hopeful stories. The hard part is you have to continue to tell the truth.
Yeah.
and often which comes with negativity. But we have to give people hope, otherwise they're going to give up. I mean, do you see that? Do you see people out there in your travels giving up?
I do. And the thing that I love most about what I do is the opportunity to talk to people at events around the world. And the thing that people have in common is the sense of urgency and impending doom that we get from the negative coverage of these issues in the media, but also a huge amount of momentum in the desire to be part of the solution. And there's a story that I want to share about two people that I interviewed for film projects. One was a dairy farmer in Vermont, and he had just taken his entire dairy operation organic to address the blue algae problems in a local lake. And he showed me his farm all day, and at the end of that day, I asked him, so how do all of these changes make you feel? And he said, I feel terrific, because for the first time, the choices that I make are aligned with the things that I believe in, and I feel at peace, and I feel that what I'm leaving to my children is something greater than what I inherited. And I thought that was profound, and I moved on. We finished our project, and about 6 months later, I was hosting a documentary for National Geographic in Madhya Pradesh in India, which is a very conservative rural part of the country full of small cotton farmers. And I interviewed a cotton farmer and asked him, after he told me the whole process of going organic, I said, how did it make you feel? And he said, I feel terrific, because for the first time in my life, the things that I believe in are aligned with the choices that I'm making, and I'm feeling at peace. And I feel that I'm giving something greater to my children, that will be my legacy. And I think that is what we are all looking for. But we get distracted by this asymmetrical balance of reporting on the issues. And one of the most important things that I think we can do is look for those good stories. Look for the stories of innovation, the stories of solutions and change makers, and people who are giving us a roadmap to the future that we want to live in, and be part of that. Focus on that, and find ways to support that.
Yeah, because it's no secret that the solutions to sustainability, solutions to a greener life, solutions to greener energy are there. We see them, and in many respects they're booming. The solar, wind, geothermal, those industries have never been busier, never been more successful. But unfortunately, those stories of their success have to fight through this continued negativity.
Yeah.
So I guess then it's incumbent upon us to find ways to tell those more positive stories.
Absolutely, and it's something that I've shifted my focus to address. I still work a lot with ocean conservation, and I'll be talking about that later on today, but with you, actually. But I think we need to look at good impact in the world. Those ways that others are having impact, ways that we can have impact through the choices that we make every day. And all of that is available to us, as you said. But finding it, aggregating it, and bringing it together to share with people isn't as widely available. And I think we need to focus on that.
Yeah.
Because the future is the result of our choices, not the choices of others, the choices that we make. And those choices are not necessarily a sacrifice. Those choices can be empowering, engaging, bring us together as communities, offer us an opportunity to live with more prosperity, happier, healthier lives. And that's what we all aspire to. Yeah. So
your grandfather was amongst many titles, was a great explorer.
He was.
And I struggle all the time today trying to work on the definition of what is exploration today.
I think we all struggle with that.
Yeah. What is exploring today? Because obviously, from this port here in Lisbon, boats sailed away carrying men, and mostly men, looking for new lands and new treasures, etc., which was then the definition of exploration. It was going to places where there were no maps, But now everything is mapped. We each have one in our phone that could take us to the North Pole if we wanted. So that's not exploring anymore. So what do you think what does it mean to be an explorer today?
Well, the National Geographic defines exploration as inspiring people to protect the planet. But I think that while that is a really important part of it, and certainly a big part of what we do there, exploration has always been the realm of the unknown. And as you said, most of our planet is mapped. But there are many unknowns still to be discovered. Those unknowns are solutions to problems, innovations, the ways that we talk about new ideas and new opportunities, and the way we craft our future. That is the exploration that I think we need to focus on. Not so much finding new people or new places, unless it's the bottom of the ocean. And one of my biggest pet peeves is we've explored less than 5% of the ocean, and we know more about the surface of the moon. So there's a lot of exploration still to be done in the ocean. But I think the realm of ideas is the biggest frontier left to us.
Well, I have a long list, but of what I define as new explorers, looking for solutions to disease in outer space, looking for solutions to disease in the ocean, looking for new energy sources. I think energy sources are the goal of our time. You know, if people can find clean energy solutions, that is going to transport the world like finding new lands did 500 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the end is not written.
The end is not written. No.
Many solutions that we haven't found to the problems that we need to address.
And how much time do you spend in the ocean these days?
Not enough.
Not enough.
Not enough.
And what would Jacques make of the environmental world, the ocean world today, do you think?
Well, my grandfather started exploring the oceans when they were still abundant and they were still diverse. 70 years ago, we still hadn't invented the extractive fishing industry that we have today. We hadn't grown our cities and used chemicals and all these things that flow into the oceans, and we hadn't cut rivers off from the sea to the extent that we have today. So the oceans were a very different place when he started. Over the course of the decades that he was filming and telling those stories, he saw profound changes and became extremely concerned. But my grandfather was also somebody who had infinite belief in human potential and loved innovation. He loved gadgets, whether it was the latest fad in hearing aids or building a new type of propeller system for his boats. And I think that where he would be focused today beyond storytelling, which he would always do, would be technology. And the new technologies, not just for solving the problems, but for engaging people.
And for storytelling. Imagine the Calypso with drones.
Yeah, there you go.
It'd be fantastic.
It would be fantastic. And he'd be going nuts on Instagram, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, in my expeditions, in my history of exploring, the technology side has changed as quickly, if not more, than the sustainability side. I think the first time we went to Antarctica in 1989, we still used a hand-cranked radio to communicate. And now people go to the South Pole with an iPhone and send out photos and videos and text from the most remote corners of the world. And in regard to sustainability, what are your biggest concerns? What are your biggest worries today?
My biggest worry is this. So when I was 7 and learning to ski, my instructor would always tell me, when you're going down the mountain, never look at the trees. Because if you look at the trees, you'll end up in the trees, and that's not where you want to go. Always look at the bottom of the hill where you want to arrive, and that's how you'll get there. And I think that my biggest concern with sustainability is that we're all looking at the trees. We're all looking at a future where there's more plastic in the oceans than fish. We're looking at a future where there's food insecurity and mass migration and refugees and climate instability and monster storms. That is what we talk about. And so that's becoming the roadmap to the future. What we need to do is talk about the solutions and the positive vision of our potential and our possibility and where we can go and make that our roadmap. And I think that if we're able to do that, to shift our focus away from all of the really scary negative things that are making people switch off and go back to watching reality shows, right? I think we can inspire them with a different vision of tomorrow. And that vision of tomorrow is what we need to build. And we won't build it by talking about all of the negative, apocalyptic visions of what's going to happen to us.
And to that end, then, is there an individual example or a person you've met recently who gives you hope? Other than the 14-year-old girl who
oh, bless her heart. No, I think that my whole life, I have been fortunate enough, especially throughout my youth with my family, to see beautiful places and meet incredible people, scientists and change makers and community leaders who are creating momentous change where they are. And they're still there. And they, no matter who the president is, no matter what the economy is doing, they work and they keep working. And I think that they are my continual source of inspiration. We don't know their names, we don't talk about them in the media, we don't celebrate their successes. And so they are unknown to us, but they are legion. And for me, they are the inspiration that gets me going, but I think that can also shift the conversation about what's really happening, what reality is happening, and how we can be engaged in being part of that. And the truth is, as I said, the future is made of human choices. That's how we get from here to there. It's a series of human choices, all of our choices. And the other thing that's really important to remember is that the questions we ask define the path we follow. And so I think I would end just by saying, ask questions. Ask questions about where your food comes from, where your clothes come from, where your products come from. Ask questions when you travel, because those are important questions. And if we all start asking those questions, then we will start moving on a different path.
Yeah, and stay hopeful.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Well, thank you, Alexandra.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you.